What's going on, everyone? In this video, I'm going to walk you through my latest gym workout, and it was a tough one. Why was it tough? Well, I did it coming off of several nights worth of very poor sleep. By the time I got out of bed this morning before the workout, I felt pretty much like mush. I've been dieting for over 5 months now. And from the experience I have from my past preps, I know that eventually, after long periods of dieting, sleep is probably going to be negatively impacted. That being said, I'm not 100% sure if the poor sleep is a byproduct of the prep diet itself or if it's from some other reason. Regardless of why, though, I knew that going into this session, it was going to be a special kind of challenge. So I figured I would walk you through the workout and share exactly what my approach was to keep it really productive whilst being mindful that my body was potentially under-recovered. Before we dive into it, if you find yourself enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. Okay, let's get into it. First up were these Romanian deadlifts. With both my mind and body feeling slow, tired, and weaker than usual, I knew I needed to be extra mindful in doing these. RDLs are a big compound movement that have a high technique demand. With being mentally and physically tired, it can be very easy to let technique slip a bit, and I definitely didn't want that. Poor technique with these means a big old risk of injury and a lack of stimulus where I want it to boot, and that's not ideal. As I always do, I did several warm-up sets before my first working set, and I took them very seriously, concentrating hard on practicing my technique before the first working set. I felt sluggish during the warm-up sets, but they went fine overall. Before the first working set, mentally I gave myself permission to do less reps than usual if need be. See, by default, my tendency is to go harder than is safe to do so sometimes. So mentally giving myself permission to stop the set earlier if I needed to, it helps to take a bit of pressure off of my shoulders. It's better to stop the set a bit early after getting a good enough stimulus rather than fighting to get an extra rep or two and risk getting an injury. For the working sets, my body felt tired, but I managed to snap myself into a good, it's game time mentality. I was very particular about my technique, and it ended up going pretty well. I didn't end up dropping any of my reps, and my mind-muscle connection was really good. So despite the poor sleep, I still got it done. Machine bench press was next, and thankfully I was feeling a bit more awake after having done the Romanian deadlifts by this point. The machine has a bit less of a technique demand compared to doing a barbell or dumbbell bench press. I make sure to move as low as I can at the bottom of each rep, basically as far as the machine will allow, and pause there for a second or two. I like to pause there to allow myself to sit in the stretch sensation. It both helps to reinforce my mind-muscle connection and probably leads to a bit more muscle growth stimulus. I've been doing these at mid to high rep ranges, kind of around the 12 to 18-ish reps per set mark out of personal preference. Lower reps work great too, and higher reps can probably work great as well. I still felt groggy at this point of the workout, but honestly, I felt a lot more awake after having finished the Romanian deadlifts. Leg extensions were up next. I've opted to give these the nickname of torture chair. See, the technique with these is very straightforward. You set yourself in a position, move with a full range of motion and good control, and then do as many reps as possible. Simple? Yes, but it's also pretty agonizing. You know what I'm talking about. The feeling of fire on the quads that becomes more and more intense the deeper you get into the set. That's why I call it the torture chair. Anyhow, sitting in the bench before the first set and between my working sets let my grogginess kind of take over a bit again. So it took a bit of extra willpower to get me going for each set. Even so, I got it done and somehow managed to endure the fiery quad destruction that is the torture chair or leg extensions. On a side note, this is an exercise I typically prefer to do with higher rep ranges, say over 15 reps per set. And I'll typically finish each set by doing as many lengthened partials at the end of the set as I can after I'm no longer able to do any more full range of motion reps. I'm telling you, torture chair. Chest-supported dumbbell rows were up next to smoke my traps. At this point in my workout, I honestly felt pretty much my normal self. The RDLs, machine bench press, and torture chair really seemed to wake me up. I have to say, this is an exercise that has really grown on me over the past few years. I admittedly struggled with it for a long time, mainly in figuring out how to do it in a way where I consistently felt a strong mind-muscle connection and really felt like I was hitting my traps hard. Here's how I found to do it in a way where it consistently hits the way that I want it to. For my setup, I let my upper body kind of hang over the bench a bit, rather than setting my chest completely flush up against the bench. At the bottom of each rep, and this is important, I imagine carefully reaching forward to allow my traps to really stretch out. That helps me to connect with those muscles through that strong stretch sensation. I'll pause in that stretched out position for at least a second, but sometimes longer to really sit in the stretch. As I pull the weights up, I think about pulling from the elbows rather than the hands. Actually, the word dragging from the elbows rather than pulling actually helps me a bit more. This is a movement where I really take my time and try to be precise with the way that I move. No rushing. Military press was up next. I've never been the best overhead presser, but I really like doing these nonetheless. They just feel super hardcore. The movement is a strict press, so I make sure not to jump the weights up by using my lower body. The pressing should come entirely from the delts and triceps. You might notice a couple of things as I do these though. At the bottom of each rep, I lean my thoracic spine or my upper back a bit to allow me to bring the barbell all the way down to where it meets my clavicle area. And as I press the weight up, I straighten my thoracic spine to where I can fully lock out at the top of each rep. For these, I'll typically do them at the mid to lower rep ranges, and that's kind of at a personal preference. Incline dumbbell bicep curls were next. These are the bicep exercise that aggravates my angry left elbow the least, so I opt to do them relatively frequently. I move slow and with tons of control for as many reps as possible until the point where my biceps are absolutely screaming. Moving slow with lighter loads is a way to make the muscles work very hard with the lighter weight. And the lighter weight doesn't aggravate my elbow, so this strategy is perfect. It might seem cooler to throw around 40 or 50 pound dumbbells, but honestly, lifting with this kind of technique with lighter, less impressive loads has been my preference for hitting my biceps hard, even when my elbow isn't bugging me. And last up was the French press to hit my triceps for this session. Just like doing the bicep curls, I prefer to do these with lighter loads and a slower tempo for all of the same reasons. I find that if I lift weights that are even a fraction of an increment that's too heavy, it starts to wear on my elbows to the point of taking away from the potential effectiveness the exercise could have for hitting my triceps. If I were to start developing nagging pain around my elbows, it would be pretty counterproductive to hitting my triceps effectively after all. I like to pause at the bottom of each rep because, you guessed it, I like to sit in the stretch sensation to help reinforce my mind-muscle connection and potentially get some extra muscle growth stimulus. At this point of the workout, I was pretty pooped, but I made it. And there you have it. Despite the poor nights of sleep and grogginess going into the workout, it was still very productive, and I left the session feeling a good sense of accomplishment. Hopefully, in sharing my approach to each exercise, it might help you with your own workouts. particularly if you find yourself going into a session with some poor nights of sleep under your belt. If you have any questions about what I've shared in this video, please feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer. Just before this video comes to a close, I wanted to quickly let you know about the work that I do. When I'm not making YouTube videos, recording podcast episodes, and making Instagram content, I work full-time as an online physique coach where I help my clients to accomplish their muscle growth and fat loss goals by optimizing their approach to strength training and nutrition, and I coach them through the process. I've been doing this work for over 7 years and love helping my clients to not only transform their bodies, but ultimately their lives. If you've been considering getting some help with accomplishing your own physique goals, feel free to hit the link in the description below to learn a little bit more about the work that I do and how I can help you. You can even use that link to schedule a free video consultation with me. If you have any questions about my coaching or how I can help you, just email me at sam@jadeathletics.ca. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.